If you're a Michigan fan, what are some reasonable expectations you can have for a one Bryce Underwood in 2025? Because the hype around this guy is enormous. And the thing about hype, usually it's misplaced. It's not with this kid. He's a top recruit in America. You flipped him from LSU. Look at the trajectory of Michigan football under Sharon Moore with how you finished the year. Yeah, the hype makes sense, but we're going to, again, answer that question I mentioned at the top of this thing. What are some actual reasonable expectations to have for Bryce Underwood his first year in Ann Arbor? We'll talk about that right now. If you're a Michigan fan, one, thank you because you've probably already subscribed to this channel. If you haven't yet, no time like the present. We're going to talk a lot about your Wolverines, talk a lot about the greatest sport on the face of planet Earth all year round. So again, make sure you are dialed in. Best way to be dialed in is by being subscribed. Appreciate you in advance for that. So why is there this hype around Bryce Underwood? If you're just parachuting into this, the first part is he's, again, the top player, not just top quarterback, top player in America coming out of high school. The other part of this is his recruitment in itself had a fair amount of drama to it, not because Bryce Underwood's a guy that's got the flair for the dramatic. It's just Michigan got in the game here towards the end of the cycle and were able to flip him away from LSU, and NIL had a pretty good amount to do with it. And we've said many times on the show, we have no problem with that. That, to me, is Michigan utilizing their resources and making sure they are playing ball at the highest level to then go win at the highest level. So we love that for them. I think that's a great move. The other part of this that adds to the drama and adds to the moment and the hype in itself around Bryce Underwood is the way that Michigan finished the year. A year that Michigan fans would tell you it wasn't up to expectations coming off of a national title season in 2023. But even with that being said, even with you hitting reset at quarterback, hitting reset at the head coaching position, having much less returning production by a mile than what you had from the year before, a lot of newness, and still Michigan does what? Beats Ohio State and beats Alabama in the bowl game in a year where Alabama was on the bubble to make the college football playoff. So you take that, paired with who you believe you have now at quarterback in Bryce Underwood, and it's like, yeah, there's going to be a good amount of hype around the guy and around Michigan in 2025, and for good reason. Now, one thing I think you can say when you talk about expectations for Bryce Underwood, he's going to start right away. Like, you're bringing him in to start right away. Unless there is something that is wildly unforeseen that comes into play for Michigan. I appreciate Mikey Keene. I appreciate Jaden Davis. I appreciate everyone they have in that quarterback room. But Bryce Underwood, if you want to go compete for the college football playoff, is the guy that you start from game one. Will it be perfect? No. Will there be some bumps and bruises? Absolutely. But you live and die with Bryce Underwood as your guy because he changes the trajectory of Michigan football, and also he allows you to run Chip Lindsey's offense the way that it is designed to be run. Like with what he is as an athlete running the football, the way he can test you vertically, the way defenses have to honor his mobility that only amplifies the run game. Like, Bryce Underwood's your guy. Now, with that being said, this isn't basketball, and Michigan fans, I know you love your basketball, but like Bryce Underwood, for him to have success, to gauge expectations around him, there has to be the proper amount of help around him. As special as he is, as good as I believe he's going to be in Ann Arbor long-term, and as great a career I think he's going to have, there still has to be some things to set him up for success. Like, if he's your only chess piece next year, spoiler, I don't think that's the case, it's going to be a tough go at it. Now, Michigan, we've said this during our breakdown of the offense going into next year, the priorities are still the same. Yes, you want to have a little more explosivity in the pass game, and that's a big reason why you brought in Chip Lindsey because you flipped to Bryce Underwood, but like, you still want to run the freaking ball. And so if there's no ground presence, which would surprise me, or if there's less ground presence than there has been previously, then it's hard to get a great gauge for who Bryce Underwood is as a quarterback. In that same vein, if you want to push the ball downfield, guess what you have to have? You have to have weapons to push the ball downfield with. Like Bryce Underwood, he can throw it a quarter mile. It doesn't matter if you don't have guys that can separate man-to-man coverage and go win and help my guy out to allow someone to then catch the football at the end of that quarter mile. So before you point the finger at Bryce Underwood, if things don't go the way that you want them to from the jump, make sure we're accounting for the other boxes that have to be checked when you try to evaluate his freshman season. Now, as much as I give that context, there's still a lot of responsibility on Bryce Underwood. Like the offense, we mentioned this, it's going to be quarterback-driven, which is a little bit different than what you've seen the last couple of years from Michigan. Not that the quarterback isn't still a massive part of the system, but like you beat Ohio State throwing for less than 100 yards. And you love that but it's not going to be the design here going forward for Michigan. It's going to be Bryce Underwood makes some great decisions, put the ball in the right place in any given play where we give you options. A lot of it's going to go through 19, which is a good thing, but I just want to make sure we give this disclaimer. Yes, there's got to be the proper pieces in place, but you're not making excuses for Bryce Underwood necessarily his first year as the guy. Like, I understand he's a freshman, and we appreciate that, and I think there should be maybe some loose opinions held within this first year for him, but it doesn't mean that the bottom line changes for what Michigan's supposed to be in 2025. Like, Michigan should be better than 8 wins next season. Full stop. In large part because of who Bryce Underwood is and the rest of the roster and all those things. So, yes, you lose some NFL guys. That's a massive part of this for sure, but I don't think what made Michigan last year is changing. And what I mean by that is Ohio State, and I keep going back to this game because I think it's just a perfect microcosm of what they are overall and who they're going to be under Sharon Moore. Ohio State was more talented than Michigan. And that's not me knocking Michigan. Those are just the facts. Ohio State won a national title. However, Michigan walked into Columbus, Ohio, and planted the flag after the game finished. Why? Because they were better at everything else that had nothing to do with talent on that day. So the secret sauce that makes Michigan is still very much so in play. And if you have that in play plus a special talent at quarterback, plus you would hope everyone within that roster coming back next season is able to ratchet up their game a little bit more, plus that portal class. Like, you see what I'm saying here? All the pieces for Michigan are in play for them to be a team that wins more than 8 games next season. Now, how many games do they win remains to be seen. I'm going to talk about that actually in a matter of moments here. So let's round this out with my, I guess you would say, specific expectations for a Bryce Underwood. I think the best case scenario is he's a guy that ends up being an all-conference kind of quarterback for you. And y'all, to be real, I don't think that's all that much of a stretch. I don't. Like, look across the conference, outside of Drew Aller, and I think if you're watching this video and you watched Drew Aller last year, you probably have some reservations around Penn State as a whole with what they do throwing the football with no Tyler Warren. I digress. Who's the bona fide just dude in that conference? Luke Altmaier at Illinois? Like, maybe. We'll see. I love Dante Moore at Oregon. I love Julian Sain at Ohio State, which is probably a negative thing to say in this video, but that's just how I feel about it. We'll stand on business there. Jaden Maiava at USC. I thought he looked really good that second half of that bowl game. There's a lot of potential, but there's also a lot of unknowns across this conference. Fernando Mendoza at Indiana. You see where I'm going with this? So, to me, the door is wide open for a team like Michigan, for a guy like Bryce Underwood, to hit the ground running the second year under Sharon Moore in a new offense with a good portal class, with the traits that make Michigan, to really make some noise here in 2025. So I don't think it's wild to assume that Bryce Underwood could be in that all-conference conversation. So when we talk about Michigan here in 2025 for what we expect from them, on our show, so another reason to be subscribed, we have a full-length hour-ish show that we drop multiple times a week, so make sure you're subscribed here, and also we have a podcast product there for you, so we've done all the plugs there to make sure you're dialed in with us. Appreciate you. We're going to make a far too early college football playoff prediction for 2025. Now, I hate doing that. It will change, and it is something that we don't have enough information on as it pertains to what that 12-team field could look like because we're sitting here in February. I give all those disclaimers to tell you I'm probably not going to put Michigan in that 12-team playoff field. JD, you just said how good Bryce Underwood could be. You told us we should win more than 8 games, which we think we should win a lot more than 8 games. You told us all these things about Michigan. The reason why I'm telling you that is so, one, we have a civil discourse in the mentions in the comment section, but the other part of that is because I haven't seen Bryce Underwood take a snap in a Michigan practice jersey, much less than in a game. So I'm waiting a little bit to at least see how he looks in an 11-on-11 setting before I make any definitive statements on Michigan in 2025. Now, again, this is the way too early college football playoff prediction. If he balls out in that spring game, and spring games aren't everything, but you get a good temperature for how people look in spring games and what you can expect. If he looks awesome, then yeah, Michigan, I think, will probably be in my official prediction when we get closer to the season actually happening. So I give that disclaimer to tell you I think Bryce Underwood's going to be special long-term. I think you can expect him to be a potentially all-conference guy in 2025. I think that's on the table. With that being said, we're going to make sure we hold our opinions somewhat loosely around him, around Michigan, before we start making anything that's definitive on Michigan here on the show for 2025. Appreciate y'all. Love y'all. Cato on the ones and twos for myself, JD PicKell. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section and on socials, Instagram, Twitter, @JD PicKell. We will keep this party rolling. We will see y'all next time.